my marriage broke down, so I gave up a well-paid job, my marriage crumbled, and I was on my own. I was used to earning big money as an employee, and the only option left to me was to start my own business, and I did it with $2,000 of borrowed money on my credit card. I got a load of business cards, a 10-page website, and I networked like hell. I ran away to Dubai, hence being at the Burj Khalifa. I ran away from debts, problems and life in the UK. It was a considered move to throw myself off the Burj Khalifa. I'd gone on the internet to look at painless ways to kill yourself. One of the reasons why more men than women kill themselves, 75% of suicides are male, because we don't ask for help. Actually, business is not important. Money's not important. There's two things I've found in life that are important. One is the health and one is your relationships. Because it isn't all about acquisition of wealth and money. And there is the reward. I was involved with an orphanage over in Albania, and just taking some Christmas presents there with the little ones up to 5 years of age. I mean, that is just as rewarding as growing a business to 15 million turnover that I did once in the past.
Perhaps we just need to redefine what success means.
I believe everyone has a story to tell. Through seeking true, authentic insights about the entrepreneurial journey, I provide a platform for our peers to share their stories and inspire those that listen. This is the County Business Talks podcast, produced by H2 Productions. Okay, welcome to a very special edition of the County Business Talks podcast. Today we have something a little different. I have some support on this side of the studio with my amazing co-host, a wonderful Jo Baldwin Trott. Delighted to have you with me, Jo. Everyone will remember from Series 2, our fantastic episode, which got some amazing feedback. And I know we've been talking about doing something together for a while, and I'm really excited that we're going to do this. But I'd like you to introduce our guest, if you can, Jo.
I will, with pleasure. Yeah, thanks, Sam. Great to be here and back on the podcast with you, sitting this side of the desk.
I know, this is
almost
awesome.
Like a promotion. Our guest today on County Podcasts is Rob Goddard. Rob owns 4 businesses now. He is trying to retire. He has 6 children, 2 sets of twins.
Twins.
I know. We've got 4. There are 4 sets of twins in the room.
At least
between
have
us.
more children than businesses.
He's an author of many books, CEO and founder of Evolution CBS, which is a highly successful multi-million pound advisory firm in the UK and UAE. Since 2002, Rob has been responsible for the sale of nearly 400 privately owned UK businesses, totalling over 2 billion in transaction values. He's trained over 6,000 business leaders. They're big numbers, Rob. 6,000 business leaders, and brings over 35 years of experience to helping business owners.
That's why I have a lot of grey hair. You see.
Not that much.
It's when you list those numbers, you think, my goodness.
Sorry, I just had another one.
At least you still got your hair. That's why I have to keep wearing the hats. Anyway.
Rob also works on more philanthropic and altruistic projects and causes, especially in the area of depression and suicide. His signature talk and his book, called Suicide to Success, is a very personal story of his own battle with depression, which led to a suicide attempt, and his fight back to win and triumph over adversity, to lead to a fulfilling, filled life with fun. Welcome, Rob Goddard.
You've done well to encapsulate me in 90 seconds.
Well, I'm just trying to keep up the standards
That
here.
sounds exhausting. It was exhausting listening to it.
Wow. Well, what a journey.
What's left?
Well, that's it. I think we can just finish that.
Yeah. And that, as they say.
Yeah, that's a wrap.
Great to have you, Rob. I mean, I personally am very excited to speak to Rob because, as you know, Sam, Rob is part of the Being Fine book, which I'm already plugging shamelessly.
Awesome.
But
and I believe we may have some copies here, Jo.
We do, and they're available on Amazon, obviously. But yeah, here you go, Sam. You haven't had a new copy of the
another
second
good
edition.
booksellers.
Let's give you one of those.
Being Fine.
Second edition.
Awesome.
So I'm really excited to be part of this. Thanks for inviting me. Sam.
Amazing.
Great to have you, Rob.
Pleasure.
Well, look, I think we're gonna jump straight in. I've been asking, well, basically, a lot of my guests that come on. I want to try and understand a little bit about what life was like growing up for you, really, and something about your upbringing that has shaped who you are today.
Well, I was born in Islington, Hackney. But Hackney and Islington are not what they are today.
Yeah.
I was born in the 60s, and it was a depressed area of London. And my earliest memories was mum and dad working, actually. I was what I think some sociologists call a latchkey child in that generation, where you had both parents working. So I think some of my work ethic has come from my mum and dad.
Okay.
And they would be classed as working class family that became middle class for those people that were interested in those sorts of things. But they did it through work. So there was this aspirational thing that I picked up. Not that mum and dad ever talked about it, but just watching them and the example.
What did they do for a living? Were they entrepreneurial?
Well, dad in the 60s worked, he was a manager of a booking office, a betting office in Baker Street. But he was really good with numbers, and then he trained as a bookkeeper and accountant. So he moved from running a betting shop to becoming an accountant for a large multinational business. And that's what that job caused us to move out of London, part of the London overspill in the late 60s, to go and live in leafy Hampshire in Basingstoke, that new town that was created with 48 roundabouts. So we grew up in a village just outside Basingstoke. So Dad had made that. Dad would always say that he's working class because he works for a living.
Okay.
Regardless of whether it was a profession or not, but I think my work ethic I got from mum and dad.
And what, growing up, what was your aspiration? What did you want to be? What was your?
I had a crush on my geography teacher in secondary school. So I wanted to be.
Me too.
Yeah. Oh right.
The same
Was
one.
it
We
the
didn't
same
go to
one?
the same school, just to clarify.
But I wanted to do really well in geography, so I used to shade in my maps in my homework, and to try and get an A rather than a B. So I wanted to become a cartographist, a map maker.
Right. Okay.
Then I failed geography because I couldn't persuade the examiner like I could the teacher. So I was always good with numbers. I think I got that from my dad. And so I wanted to become a bank manager. And what I had in my mind's eye as a bank manager was oak-panelled office, being able to smoke in my office, cigars, and a typing pool outside, because that's what banking was in the 70s. By the time I did go into banking, and by the time I became a bank manager, that had all gone. And no smoking in offices. They had computers instead of people who typed. And it was a very different world. But I spent 18 years in banking, and I realised after 18 years I wasn't a banker. I was a salesman. But the bank gave me a really good broad knowledge and experience of the working environment from a corporate perspective. And I did well. I progressed. But I can remember the first week in the bank, they send you away on an induction course in a very leafy part of Oxfordshire, a big mansion. And in that first week, they wanted you to plan out your 40 years in NatWest, which is who I worked for, with 5-year milestones, your 40-year career. So there was the assumption you'd stay with them for 40 years. Wow. 5-year milestones, what you'd be doing, what you'd be achieving, what you'd be earning. Wow. Some might say that was indoctrination. And the world of work has moved on now. People don't stay in the same company for 40 years.
Yeah, I couldn't. For me personally, that'd be my worst nightmare. I think
life is very different now. But that's what it was when I joined. But I realised after 18 years I wasn't cut out to be a banker. I also suffer from dyslexia and dyscalculia, which is a bad thing. If you reverse numbers with dyscalculia, it means you're not very good on the till. I would often get things wrong. My till would be wrong. So my manager at the time said, we'll take you off the till and I'll give you a clipboard and a load of access card application forms that prior to MasterCard. I want you to go in the banking hall at lunchtime and sell credit cards. And I loved it. I loved the approach. Sometimes you get abuse from customers who are saying you should get behind that blooming till. But I enjoyed that, interacting with people and offering a service that might help them. It was better than sitting behind the till. And so that's why I realised I was a salesperson, but in a banking environment. So that's the first half of my working life, was banking.
So talk to us about that then, like that starting your own businesses and you entrepreneur. Where was that switch then for you? Like, because I'm assuming, listening to you talk there, that didn't come from you. I didn't think to yourself, I'm going to run my own business one day, and it was more, I'm going to get into banking. Done that for 18 years. Where did the switch?
So I had a year in a commune in California with my young family and first wife, and that was a boot camp for me, going from bank manager to charity worker for a year, living in community with 90 other Christians, running a food ministry. Came back, and then I knew I didn't want to go back into banking, but I needed a job. And so I started work. I worked for a marketing company, and then I got headhunted into the world of mergers and acquisitions. It was a 1.5 million turnover business. I was appointed as GM, general manager, to grow it from 1.5 mil. And I took that business to 15 million turnover in 7 years. And then I realised, actually, I quite like, I'm not a numpty. I can do this. B, I'm really enjoying it. And in fairness to the owners, they gave me the freedom to treat it like my own business, but it wasn't, because I wasn't a shareholder. But they did give me a lot of freedom, and I'll always be grateful to them for that. And then in 2008, I parted company with them, because I thought, you know what, I can do this myself. I can be a shareholder of my own company. I can have as much holiday as I like, pay myself what I like. I can go first class on trains. I'm not accountable to anyone. And that was a week before the banking crisis started and the world went mad. I also, my marriage broke down, so I gave up a well-paid job. My marriage crumbled, and I was on my own. And that's what started what became a 5-year period of depression and a really dark place that many people listening to this, I'm sure, have been in or are in at the moment. And so I never chose to work for myself. Well, I kind of did in my mind's eye, but actually the reality was, because I couldn't get a job. I was used to earning big money as an employee, and the only option left to me was to start my own business, and I did it with $2,000 of borrowed money on my credit card. I got a load of business cards, a 10-page website, and I networked like hell because I didn't have working capital really. And that business I recently exited from, all but 10%. But so I didn't really choose self-employment. I think I went into it with the wrong mindset or misconceived. So it wasn't as if, this is the great thing I want to do is become a multi-millionaire through owning and growing my own business. It wasn't that. It was necessity rather than vision, if I'm being honest.
And how have you found, so obviously there's a core reason generally why people start a business. And with a view to offering what you could to people listening, obviously the listeners and watchers of this podcast, what would you offer now, having obviously mentored so many entrepreneurs? What sort of nuggets of advice and in hindsight would you think would have helped you at that time create perhaps a healthier business or a healthier you in the business? Are there any points that you see now that defined that path, sadly, to depression and suicide attempts?
So I did it through necessity. I guess if I had my time again, my advice would be to find your core purpose, the reason why. Perhaps go to someone like you, Jo, and start that process. Do you know what I mean? Because it's the hardest job in the world is working for yourself. Because you don't know when you're going to get paid. Forget about lots of holidays.
Yeah.
You're working 24/7, and even if you do go on holiday, you take the mobile and the laptop with you, or at least I have done for far too long. So definitely think about it before you jump into it. I do get people at events, at exhibitions, coming up to me and say, "What advice would you give?" I'm thinking about leaving a job and starting my own business. And I say, well, why don't you do it as a side hustle first of all? This idea, because A, you might not like it. B, you might not be able to sell what you're producing, and therefore, and also it's about backing both horses. So don't be too ready to jump. Think about it and understand your motivation for doing it, because it's hard, isn't it, to work for yourself? It is very rewarding, but it's a hard journey.
I completely agree, actually, and I guess for me, there's that point. Sometimes you can get a little bit. You see all the lights. People go and run your own business. I'm going to do it, like exactly that preconception. Well, I'm going to be my own boss. I haven't got to answer to anyone. I haven't got to do. Amazing. But then actually you've got to answer to everyone, because you're wearing so many hats. You're doing all the different,
especially
roles,
clients,
especially clients, and it's not for everyone. I think that's the message. It's not actually being an entrepreneur, running your own business isn't actually for everyone. It is quite a tough journey, as much as it's rewarding.
Yeah, I reckon it's the toughest profession, having done both corporate life and this. I know what the harder job is. You do have to be dogged. We were talking about it earlier, weren't we?
Yeah.
You have to be dogged. You can't just give up, particularly if you've got a business that employs people, because now you've got the added responsibility of other people's livelihoods. You know, you're not a solopreneur anymore, and you feel that weight on your shoulder having employees, because they've got mortgages to pay and financial commitments. So if you muck up and make poor decisions running your own business, now you're answerable to the staff, not only your clients.
Yeah.
Am I putting people off?
Yeah.
But I think that's one. I mean, just before we come up, you sort of said, "Oh, what is it that you want to get out of the podcast? What is it for?" And actually, this is ultimately what it is for. It's trying to have these honest conversations about stuff, because I think, especially nowadays with social media, hustle culture, it can be glamorised. Everyone can be an entrepreneur now, and it's really glamorised.
From your phone on the sofa, you could create a business on the bus, can't you? Really?
You get on to one of my favourite topics, Jo, of the fakepreneurs, right, that sell courses, usually ending in a 7. Thanks, Mike Winnett. Usually ending in a 7. A couple of grand. For a couple of grand, I can show you how to become a multi-millionaire within 3 months or less. It's rubbish. It takes years and years. It took me 5 years to break the £500,000 turnover on my first business. 5 years to get to over £500,000, and only 3% of businesses turn over more than £500,000.
Oh, yeah.
So it takes years. It isn't weeks and months. So definitely, going back to your point, Jo, definitely think about very carefully your core purpose. Why are you doing it? The second thing I would do differently is take advice more readily from day one from others. It took me a little while. I was doing it all myself. Strong guy, I can do this, self-confidence. Actually, I should have opened myself up to other people, both on a paid basis, but also on a friendship basis that were in business. Because there's so much wealth of knowledge, isn't there, and expertise available for the price of a pint.
Well, look, we speak often and over a coffee or whatever, but exactly that reaching out to people, and actually, we're fortunate to be in an amazing community here, aren't we?
Yeah.
In like Sussex in general, but Brighton especially, it's an amazing community, isn't it? Which we're both part of. And you do, like, I'm similar. I listen to you talk, Rob, and it's very similar. You sort of think to yourself, I'm very proud, man. I can do this. I don't need. Actually asking for help is the bravest thing you can do.
It is, and particularly, dare I say it, for us blokes, that feel that we're making ourselves vulnerable. I know that's a favourite topic of yours.
It is a bit.
And somehow it's weak, and it isn't. Actually, it shows inner strength. And I've gotten over that hump years ago, and I love spending time with other business owners, other people in the business world, just talking, chatting, listening, and invariably glean a thing or two just by having a conversation like we did this morning.
Yeah.
So that's part of the enjoyment now. But yeah, those two key things.
I think that's fed really nicely onto a topic that I know Sam and I really want to talk about today, is this idea, the ideology of success. If there's a book title, that is one. Because it seems that is part of the problem, stroke also solution, but the root of it is that there's this perception that, the belief that we've got to perceive ourselves and let the world see us, a mask that is put on, that we're successful. And you and I network a lot, Sam, and obviously in my work I can see beneath the mask, but so many people are putting on this mask that I'm running a successful business.
Yeah.
So I think you've mentioned the mask in your chapter and being fine, and that's one of the reasons why you wanted to be in the book, was that you wore that mask for a long time in your business. Can I just ask what was going on behind the mask, and obviously sadly you took yourself on you were going up the Burj Khalifa on a very contrived, you arranged the trip to the Burj Khalifa with a tour guide, and took yourself up to the top of it, and then tried to get out of the top of the Burj Khalifa to finish things. Obviously that's very sad, extreme, and if anyone is listening to this, I'm really aware that we just need to mention that the Samaritans, My Black Dog, please reach out. If anything that is mentioned in this podcast gives any sense of real connection with you, if you're listening or watching, please reach out to the Samaritans or any of the charities that are available, or as Rob goes on to explain in a minute, hopefully his angels, someone that's close to you, because the last thing we want to do in this is obviously trigger anyone. But what was that the chunk of your life then, and what were you covering up under the mask?
The real me.
Okay.
I think, was it Shakespeare that said the world's a stage, everyone are actors and the world's a stage, sort of thing. So I think most people put on a performance or an act, or take on a mask in some degree or other, because we don't want the outer world to know what we're really like. It's part of the problem with social media. We live our best life on social media, or quite often people do. And I think it sometimes is overused now about being authentic, but it is true that we do need to be ourselves, like it or lump it. And I've learned eventually that not everyone loves me. Most people are mediocre towards me in the world, and some don't like me at all, but that's fine. So I think it was putting on, particularly in sales, having spent 40 years in sales environments, you're putting on this performance. You're an actor to some degree. So it was natural. It was a learnt technique, really, to be who I thought the prospect wanted me to be, a chameleon. I was an effective salesperson. I was really good at this. But it's mechanical and scientific, whereas what I've been doing for some time now is just being my real self. And that comes out in LinkedIn posts and videos and exhibitions and places that I talk at. It's just being Rob. And people can see through the rest. So I was hiding myself. And during that period of time, I ran away to Dubai, hence being at the Burj Khalifa. I ran away from debts, problems, and life in the UK. I did a geographic, as someone once said. Went to Dubai, never been to Dubai, never been to the Gulf. Don't really like the desert. But I wanted to get away and start a fresh chapter. But of course the problem is, all my problems came on the plane with me, on Emirates Airlines. So I spent a year out in Dubai, and the depression got worse, because what I'd done is take myself away from support networks, family, friends, and people who care. And yeah, I did end up, it was a considered move to throw myself off the Burj Khalifa. I even worked out with my trusty calculator how long it would take me before I hit the ground, and it'd be 13 seconds at terminal velocity. So that's quite a quick way, because I'd gone on the internet to look at painless ways to kill yourself. Those were search words. I wanted to go ahead with it, and I didn't want it prolonged. and I wanted to make sure I wasn't rescued and make sure it didn't go on for hours because someone might rescue me. So I thought the Burj Khalifa would be straightforward. The reason I'm still living and breathing and talking with you today is that there was a locked fire exit on the 100 and whatever floor it was, 123rd floor. I don't know why someone locks a fire exit door, but they did on that day. It'd only been open a year, I think, at that point, the Burj Khalifa. But thankfully someone did. And so I came back down on the lift from Burj Khalifa thinking I couldn't even take my own life. But my next action was to get in contact with someone called Alex, who you referred to as my angel. And he was. He's a normal bloke. He hasn't got wings and he hasn't got a halo. And he came over. And we spent 4 days. He's a business coach, or was a business coach in those days, and a life coach as well. It was about the person rather than the business. Yeah. And we spent 4 days together at my apartment, and he looked in the fridge and he said, "There's nothing green in your fridge. It's all beer or meat." But it was great because he asked me, particularly poolside, he asked me some really searching questions about what do I really want in life. So it was going back to core purpose and the reason for being, and I mentioned money. I said I want to earn a 6-figure sum again because that's all gone. And I want this, I want that. And he just asked why. He kept drilling down. So after those 4 days with Alex, he went back, and then I tied up loose ends, and I came back to Britain and faced my problems, faced my debts, my issues. And with Alex, met with him regularly, and there was a few other friends as well that I used to meet with for coffees or beers or whatever it was, or lunch. I needed that support network. One of the reasons why more men than women kill themselves, 75% of suicides are male, because we don't ask for help, going back to the original thing. Yeah. So that was my journey. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with Dubai. Anyone listening to this is living in Dubai. Dubai is a wonderful place. I was the problem. Dubai wasn't the problem. It was me. When I came back, I started my own business, which is the one that I exited from a couple of years ago. But I needed that experience in Dubai to go through, I think, to make me a stronger person, decide what I really wanted in life. Because I know when Alex said, "What do you really want?" my initial response was, "I don't really know." He said, "But if you did know, what would it look like?" Because he knows I'm a visual person, not an audio person. So he got me to describe in picture form what life would be like. So I came back, and that business grew over the next few years. That grew so well in the UK that we wanted to open up an international office. So the first place I thought of was Dubai, because I wanted to go back and kill a few ghosts. So in 2016, I went back there and opened up the UAE office. And that was I could have picked anywhere, really. There's plenty of other places, actually, that are not so dusty, not so hot in the summer. It had to be Dubai for me. And I can remember flying across every 6 weeks. I did it for 4 years. I commuted to Dubai every 6 weeks. I can remember the terminal doors, at Terminal 3, the doors opening, and feeling that warmth from the Dubai climate, thinking, I'm back. And I did it for 6 weeks. Did it every 6 weeks. That, for me, was so pleasurable, apart from obviously growing a business. But I needed to face my ghosts. It's a long... I don't know whether I've covered what the question was.
More than, I think, and that's a really powerful,
That's the Dubai experience for me.
No, thank you.
Honestly, thank you for sharing. I think, like I say, trying to create this space for people to actually be as open and honest as that. And there's so many things that have come to my mind. One, I'm just keen to, if I can, go to that point that you got there, where you went to the Burj Khalifa. Leading up to that, your mindset around, was it literally because of debts and stuff, and the financial pressures that got you to that stage? Or?
It did, yeah, and partly because I went out, I was self-employed, commission only in Dubai. Going back to something I used to do, which was be an IFA. I was a wealth manager under the umbrella of a company, but they don't give you a salary. You eat what you kill. And I had no network of friends and support network. So I mean, I was really it was hardcore. And the temperatures people have been out there for 6 months of the year is, for a British person born in Hackney, quite unbearable. My problems got bigger because I gave myself some new problems on top of the ones I thought I'd left behind. It just got too much, and I couldn't find a way out. And when you can't find a way out, one of the options you think about is, look, the only thing I can control is whether I'm breathing or not. That's the only... When you're depressed, or when I can't speak for the rest of the world, when I was depressed, it felt like... My picture was, it was a black cloud that come and goes as it wants. So I had no control over the depression, how I felt, even with prescribed drugs, medication rather. When depression happens and you don't feel in control, you feel something less than human. That somehow you've lost control over your life. And I'd always been in control of my life. I've been a bank manager, for goodness sake. I used to control other people's lives with loans and overdrafts and staff. For the first time in my life, when I was 45, I was out of control. I was not in control. That's a horrible place to be. And even with children, I wrote, I compiled a death diary, which was helped me get some of my feelings and angst and turmoil on paper, so I could get back to sleep at 4 a.m. It gave me an outlet to write things down. I called it a death diary, sort of black humour really. But that death diary I kept, and then I committed it. When I came back to the UK a few years down the line, I typed it up. And that became what became a book, Suicide to Success. And it was someone who said to me, because I kept it on my C drive for 2 years because I didn't want the world to know. For me, it was just a personal thing. It was a diary I put onto my laptop. But someone close to me said, why? Why didn't you share this? I said, because I don't want to be seen as vulnerable and weak. You know, I'm in the business world. I don't want people thinking less of me because I've gone through a really difficult period. And she said, rubbish. Get over yourself, Rob Goddard. So I published it and had it rewritten properly, but in more of a story format. So it was cathartic for me. And I've given that book out so many times at events, on one-to-ones, because I've been in talk to people about selling their business, but sometimes they don't need to sell their business because I want to find out why are they selling their business. Don't want to talk about numbers or accounts or P&Ls. Why? Why sell? Why now? Sometimes it's because their life is rubbish. And they want to change their life. So the only thing, as a business owner, the only thing they see is I'll finish one chapter by selling the business and start something new with some cash on the hip. But that may not be the right motivation, and often isn't. So now when I'm sitting down with business owners, I'm trying to understand through questioning and listening, what is their motivation and what are they looking to do and what do they want to achieve and how do they want to do it? And yeah, so it's really these soft issues I'm concentrating on. I can talk the hard issues. I can talk numbers till the cows come home.
But do you think, like, it's so interesting because the narrative hopefully is starting to shift and starting to change a little bit, but that we do celebrate soft skills, we do celebrate people like you being brave enough to come on and write your book in the first place, but come on these type of podcasts and able to share your story openly and honestly, because by people doing that, I'm keen to just again back there. Did at the time you you didn't share any of those feelings with anyone else at the time, other than obviously Alex when you did.
Alex, definitely, yeah, but even not the full extent with Alex, because I didn't want to spook him. I certainly didn't tell him at the time that I tried to throw myself off the world's tallest building. I thought I'd keep that back.
Wow, so even when he was helping you at the
he knew I was in a bad way, but I didn't give him the full story. I gave him 90%.
So that it was almost fear of what he would take on, which
I didn't want to scare. Quite often people don't ask for help because they don't want to burden the other person. I had it last week with a friend, a really good friend, and a business owner, and he's got into problems with VAT. But he could have spoken to me last year. Could have nipped it in the bud, but he didn't. And they said, "Why didn't you pick up the phone to me? I would go for a chat." I didn't want to burden you. Yeah. So we've got to get, as a group of people, we've got to get over this. Well, and because we do want to help, don't we?
Well, and as you mentioned earlier, especially as men, and obviously having published Being Fine and speaking to around 30 authors in total. Yeah. Obviously, 14 are in the book. But that the two things that hold people back from being really honest with themselves, men, were burden and shame.
Right. Interesting. Yes.
So that's what kept the mask on. But burden is a really powerful one, because I think that is, especially as a dad, I'm going to say as a dad with children, and culturally where the man, the guy is the one, he's generally on average the main breadwinner, so supporting the family financially, and I think this is a really important sort of topic, and of actually the burden, and what I would offer, if I'm just feeling to just throw this one in, I won't come back to you, Rob, but actually the burden for your partner, and I don't know if this was the case with you, Rob, but the burden for people that can witness it and see it, but that you're not sharing to, is way bigger than actually you opening up, because the person who's, and I feel like this is a timely moment to mention this in the podcast, but if anyone is listening to this and this is relevant to, but by not sharing it, the person who loves you and looks at you every day, or perhaps it's a colleague, or if you're not married but generally a partner, that burden of not knowing what your loved one is going through will be way heavier than hearing the truth. I can promise you that.
It is.
And what was that like for you, Rob? Obviously, because you were married at that stage still, or was you'd left your wife, but
yes, so a number of years where I was single, suicidal thoughts, depression, and then I got remarried, and that was helpful, because I was coming out of the trough of depression. And sadly that marriage didn't last, but I think people come into your life for a reason. I really believe that. So that helped me. The person that has been consistent from start to finish, has seen me through 2 marriages and a partnership, is the person I married last year, Christina. Third and final. She told me that. But she'd been a best friend for years. But even Christina, I couldn't, when I was in the depth of depression, I couldn't tell. I've only subsequent, when I came back to the UK, set up my own business. Well, just me, it was a job. It isn't a business if it's just me, it's a job. She came and worked for me part-time to sort out my admin. And what we would do, sometimes I can remember just the emotion welling up in the office and crying. And so Christine would say, right, put the laptop down and we go for a coffee. And I needed that. So I think we don't need loads of people to confide in, but one would be brilliant. 2 or 3 is fantastic.
And sometimes it's not the person that you obviously think, is it? Because I saw this recently on a LinkedIn post. I don't think it was one of yours. Someone was sharing that the person they needed to share it with wasn't their wife, although they were very close to their wife. They really felt they couldn't share it with their wife. Hopefully they've gone on to share it with them. but it's worth broadening your horizons. Think, actually, I know there's someone there to listen to me. And that's really key, isn't it? There will be someone. There will definitely be someone, but it might not be the obvious person.
Well, that taps into the associated topic of living for today and living in the present, because we can miss these opportunities to share. And it may not be that you share with someone else. It might be that they need someone. So Alex was listening to me, but also I can be an Alex to someone else, to use that, not to stretch that analogy too far, but often we're so busy being busy, we're not taking time out to listen to folk that we're it might only be a half an hour interaction. It might be someone on the train. Doesn't have to be someone you've known for years. I think we've lost something of that as a race of people.
I think it's so much to do with again, back to hustle culture, that we're in this consumer society where we feel that we constantly have got to strive for something, and if you're not working 18 hours a day and you're not grafting and you've not got these side hustles and you're not doing, then you're not productive and you're not successful, and etc, and that BS, I guess.
It's definitely BS. You don't. In fact, I've said, and in fact I said it yesterday, I've just taken on a salesperson in one of the companies that I'm involved with. I'm not interested in your input, the hours that you work. Not interested. I'm interested in your output. I don't care if you're working 10 hours a week, but smashing your targets. I don't care. I know I'm different to some other employers, but it isn't about the hours that you work.
No.
And some people work long hours. They're very highly active, but highly unproductive. Activity doesn't mean productivity. And I think you're right, definitely right. I think the emphasis is too far the other way, that you've got to work all hours that God sends in order to be successful, and you don't. You really don't.
I think, because I'm definitely, me and you spoke about this, and I'm definitely one of those people who've been guilty of that, certainly in the past, and even probably still sometimes today. I'm trying to, I guess the podcast is my therapy. I guess is one of the reasons I love it so much, and I'm so inquisitive about it. But because I would wear that busyness as a badge of honour almost. Like, look at me, I'm still at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm still working, and then I was up at 6, and then I've done this and I've done, almost as if people go, how are you getting on? So yeah, really busy, really. Like, what is?
So what have you achieved from all that busyness?
Yeah, exactly. I'm just actually a busy fool.
But I am a recovering workaholic, so I'm not I don't want people thinking I am the perfect example. I still have this gravitation to working hard, which is why I'm trying to retire.
Trying.
I love work, and I get a sense of purpose and identity and fulfillment from it. But I'm also very aware that too many hours can kill you. You can burn out well too easy. I've got a client at the moment that I recognise, he's 30 years of age, and I see the signs of someone burning themselves out at a younger age. God knows what it's like when you're 40, 50, 60, 70.
What signs do you notice in him?
Far too intense, can't have conversations about other things other than business. And I asked him yesterday, what motivates you? He went, money.
Really?
Yeah. So really pertinent to our conversation today. So what is it about money then that you put it right at the top of the list? And he associates it with success. He came from the financial services world, hedge funds and stuff. So I get that environment. I'm familiar with that. But yeah, it's about, for me, it's about working hard in the periods of time that you allow in the day and the week, but being productive. I say no 80% of the time, roughly, on stuff. I get lots of stuff coming through my inbox and DM on LinkedIn, some of which I respond to, and when I do, it's a nice no. It's actually knowing what not to do as much as what you want to do, because we can go off in all directions, can't we?
Yeah. Because
there's so many things you can do. You can do anything, but you can't do everything in life. So
that's really good advice. Because I'm very much a yes man.
Well, yeah.
So someone goes, "Oh, you want to do?" Yeah, sounds like a good idea. And then I go, "Oh, how am I going to fit that in?" But that's there is I guess my slight caveat on that and the take on it is that actually, because I do look at life as an opportunity, so I do think if I say yes to that, there's sometimes great experiences come from that. But at the same time, listening to what you're saying and what I take away from it a lot is that you can't do everything.
You can't, and some people get into trouble, particularly as when they're older and maybe not in the best of health.
Yeah.
Stress is a killer. Long-term stress is a killer.
Yeah.
And also bad lifestyle in terms of eating habits and stuff like that, eating on the go, right? So so it's not what you put in, it's what you achieve. There are some really successful, wealthy people that don't work a full working week.
Yeah.
I've met a number of them,
Yeah.
but they are the minority.
Yeah. Well, and I think that brings on to that cliche phrase, work-life balance. How, if you think about it, what a ridiculous statement, because work is life. They're not two separate things, and I feel this is part of the problem. Just sort of offer this one in, that it's seen as your work and your life, and then your life, and then get the balance between the two. But actually, it's more about recognizing what your work is and how it needs to be part of your life, because it's not, you especially. Everyone here, we all work from the heart. What we do with our lives in work is from the heart. It's a personal calling and message and purpose. And I feel like a lot of people do, especially I've noticed here from London, moving from London to here, more people do work from the heart, is what I'd say. They work in the area they're passionate about. So therefore, why you don't have to make a separation. Give yourself a break, because I think that then there's a pressure of like, well, when do you end your day? Because you don't. Because if you're an entrepreneur, you'll watch a podcast at night, or you'll just check in on a LinkedIn. On a Sunday, I end up on LinkedIn. Why? I don't know, but it's interesting and it's better than reading BBC because it's more truthful, in my opinion. But there's lots of stuff I do which is work.
Yeah.
And so I can either attach I'm guilty of working on a Sunday mentality to that, or I can say, this interests me because I work from the heart, and therefore I give myself permission to happily look on LinkedIn on a Sunday, even though my kids want pancakes already. So all of this is part of an awareness, isn't it?
I just wanted to say something about one of our sponsors, Plus X. I've been a member for over 2 years now, and the podcast studio here is the home to the County Business Talks podcast. Brighton is the perfect location to create, build and grow a business, with role models and inspiration at every turn. It's no wonder that this has become a hotbed of innovation and entrepreneurialism. So if you're building your future here on the South Coast, there's no better place than Plus X Brighton. 7 stories of cutting-edge space, expertly designed to support all kinds of business, from newly started freelancers to large established corporates. With flexible, dynamic environment, ranging from co-working desks to private studios, their specialist facilities include a state-of-the-art prototyping workshop and media suites. They also maintain a community-focused event schedule and offer all kinds of business support programs. Built for anyone who wants to make a change, Plus X has everything you need. Find out more at www.plusx.space. Okay, back to the episode.
It is, yeah.
Making it healthy.
It is. It's the holistic approach. You're right. We can often compartmentalise life, but it isn't. You're one person. I'm a dad, and I happen to work for a living.
Yeah.
And even though I technically, funnily, I don't need to now. I don't need to work. I can't think of anything more boring, and than not working. Pipe and slippers. I can remember my granddad retiring in 1970. He got the pewter. It wasn't even silver. He got the pewter bowl inscribed, thanking him for his 46 years service, law service, and a letter from the chairman. That was it. And then a state pension. So he tended his chrysanthemums, and then he'd go with my gran into town 3 times a week. That was retirement. So that, for me, the retirement thing is a big issue, because it's now changed.
You're trying to retire though, but
yes.
But like, listening to you talk, and obviously that with your experiences and knowledge and how you help other people as well now, do you think you'll ever stop and retire? Because what would you do?
Well, what is retiring?
Yeah.
What does retirement mean? I mean,
Does it
doesn't mean what it used to do.
I ask that question to most of the business owners I meet that want to sell their business, because one of the R word comes up quite often. Either they say I'm not ready to retire, or I'm ready to retire. One of the two. Depends on how old they are, usually. And I said, well, what is retirement to you then? And the only thing I can come up with that's quite helpful is it's the ability to choose not when to work and not to work and who to work with. And that's freedom. So I still work, even though I haven't got a proper job, haven't had for a couple of years. I'm as busy.
Proper job. What is a proper job?
Anyway, proper job. Sorry. Like one job where you're running a business and you've got staff what's a proper job? Mine's a potpourri of activity. Some of it, though, we've just moved house. Saying to Jo, we moved house last week, and it's got a decent-sized garden this time, first time ever. And I've been watching YouTube. I follow 30-odd subscribers, 30-odd content creators on just gardening. Right? And I love that on a Sunday as well. Right. Well, actually 7 days a week. And I've decided, having done my research on YouTube, I want exotic plants, hardy exotics. So I bought 3 palm trees. And I've got a whole load. eBay and Amazon are daily deliveries now and for the last week. I want an exotic plant garden, and I've got koi carp because they're very relaxing to watch them. But I don't want to watch them from above. I want to watch them from the side. So I've ordered a preformed big fish tank, 2.5 meters wide by 2.5 meters deep, with a viewing window. But that's all activity. But it's stuff I'm choosing to do. I'm still doing business consultancy, business mentoring. I still speak at events. I'm involved with a few businesses on investment fundraising, helping businesses strengthen their balance sheet by having an external investor come in. So it's a potpourri of stuff. It's really busy. And Christina tells me I work too hard. And the problem is, when you're only doing stuff that you want to do, it's really hard to give up. So I haven't got to the end yet, Sam, at all on this. I'm a work in progress still. I need to do less. Christina calls it pottering. I don't mind pottering in the garden with the coffee, but it's actually taking time out and not being so active, because I've had 40 odd years of being active, and it's really hard to give up a habit.
I guess being active differently.
Yeah, but it's worse when you actually enjoy the things you're doing rather than having a job that you don't like. You're only doing it to pay the bills. That is purgatory.
There's a big difference between that, isn't there? And because if you're doing the things like you said, where you do things from the heart, which we love doing. Actually, I enjoy doing that. So, like me, on a Sunday night, every Sunday night, I'll put the podcast mail shot that goes out on a Monday morning, and I'll put that together. But I love that because I love doing this. I love what message is going to go out and what quote's going to go with that, and I'll put that together. And that's part. So I am working on a Sunday, and is that a good thing? Don't know. I do need to be more present sometimes, and etc. etc. But if you're doing the things that you love and you've got a purpose, that's the key thing. It's not the thing that I find tricky and I struggle with sometimes is the guilt feeling, because running a business, it's always something to do. When I'm not working, I sometimes feel guilty for not working. And that's
you're right.
Baby or beast syndrome, I call that.
What's that?
So when your business is a baby or a beast, yours is a baby. You can't put it down. You're scared something's going to happen, and then it's going to, struggle or get hungry or. It's just a business. It's still just a business.
And I'm trying to get better, because I think, and the other thing about you mentioned earlier about being present. I think that's for me again. I know we spoke about it last time we had a coffee, didn't we? I said my goal this year is to try and achieve that. Be more present in the moment, whatever I'm doing. Whether that be sitting there having dinner with my wife, sitting in there having a great conversation with you guys, or with the kids or work, whatever that is, just be in that moment.
Definitely, you're spot on particularly with the kids, because I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this, watching this. it's the children are often the casualty of highly driven business owners that want to build something of value. And the kids are a secondary thought. Sadly, they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And I've fallen into that myself. And so it's finding those portions of time where the things that are most important. Actually, business is not important. Money's not important. There's two things I've found in life that are important. One is the health, and one is your relationships close to you. It's health and relationships. I've been poor and rich twice. 2 cycles. I've built, I've lost it twice, and I've come back a third time. And actually, life was simpler when I was poorer, when I was Brassic. I can remember having to share a cup of coffee with Alex in a Costa Coffee in Newbury. And we didn't have enough money between us because he was going through a difficult time. So was I. We didn't have enough cash between us. So we had to share a cup of coffee. We had to club together. But actually, life is simpler because when you've got very little money, you ain't got a lot of choices. In fact, the stress comes when you have some money and then you've got choices and there's people wanting to relieve you of some of that cash in all sorts of things. People pitching to you. So it's a different world. Yeah. But yeah, make time for your health and make time for relationships. Business comes second.
But there is still that, because there is still that thing that when we spoke about that financial gain, because actually I don't want financial gain for material things. I don't care what car I drive, to be honest, or what clothes I wear, or I've never been a designer. That's not my thing. I'd love to have more money to provide maybe a different life for the kids, or I'd love to not worry about money, because the stress of worrying about money to pay them bills, that side of when you're robbing, especially when you're a business owner, we're in that position where we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and where that stress is what gets. So if that was taken away, then
it can be done. A good friend of mine, and you know her, Tracy Miller, years ago when I was coming off the bottom of depression, Tracy said to me, to help me face my fears, what are you most worried about? And it was about having no money. And she said, well, what's the worst that can happen? What would you do if the clients that the few clients that you've got disappear and you've got no money? What would you do? I said, well, I'll get a van or something, because you can always find the money or borrow the money. I'd get a van, like a transit, and I would go and do house clearances. I'd get paid to clear someone's house, because I go to the obituary column. I make friends with undertakers, right? It's the business mind. I do house clearances.
Think outside
for a
the
fee.
box.
Yeah, so then you're collecting stuff. Some of it be rubbish. Some of it will be valuable. Sell it on eBay. Go to jumble sales. And so she said, well, what if you couldn't afford the rent? I said, well, the van I can convert. I can put in a bunk bed, so I can sleep in the van. She said, right, now you've faced your fear.
Yeah.
You don't need to end it all by committing suicide. You've got a plan B. That's the worst that can happen.
Yeah.
And it really was helpful having someone talk me through that process. And now I don't have a fear of losing it all tomorrow. It'd be different. But it's not the most important thing in my life, the bank balance. The most important thing is my health, because if I have a coronary, the how much money I've got in the bank account. And so if I'm a lonely, wealthy person, what value is that in life? I've got no one to share it with. Yeah. If I'm on my Todd, or I'm suspicious of people's motives for getting to know me because they want my cash, that's a horrible life. But there's people out there that live that life. Yeah. I don't want that.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Yeah, it's very. Certainly, I listen to that, and like I say, for me, we spoke about it, and I've shared on here a few times. If we'd had this conversation 10 years ago, I'm the one who's going, money motivated. I want money. I want to achieve this. And when I got to 40 and I hadn't achieved my financial goal being this time next year I'm going to be a millionaire and blah blah blah. And the famous saying I've said many years.
Took them 20 odd years, didn't they, in the TV series?
I'm still looking for me watch. I keep going in that garage. I go, Kel, it's going to be in there somewhere.
House clearance.
House clearance. That's it. I'll see where you're going.
I'm giving you that tip for free.
I love that. Those goals. But you do it. I remember that point at 40. You know, what changed that narrative? That's why, for me, that narrative around how we measure. Because I was trying to measure my success based around financial gain, and if people had looked at me and looked at my bank balance still today, and go, oh, he's not a very good businessman. He's not very successful. But then you go, I look at the relationships I've built within a community, within the business community, with friends who I've still got, who I've grown up with from school, very close to my family, and a beautiful wife and 2 amazing kids. Wow, like that's an amazing.
Yeah, because once you're 6 foot under, that money's gone to someone else. The tax man initially, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The inheritance tax, but it's gone as soon as you go underground or you're cremated. It's gone. What remains are your children, friendship, people's memories of you. I do want a pyramid, actually, glass pyramid. I wind up the wife with it. Yeah, your face. Neon lit, so it's purple, on a mountainside in Albania. It'd be a tourist attraction.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that drives business people, particularly if they're looking at selling up, is to leave a legacy. They want their business to be a legacy. That comes up really quite a lot. So it is a concern to when they're meeting potential buyers for their business. They want to make sure it's in the right hands, not only for the staff, but it's the right thing to do for the legacy of the business over the next few decades. That it won't be asset stripped or changed beyond recognition. So leaving a legacy is really important.
That's interesting.
Yeah, something. That's what people have. Leave permanent structures in rock and that sort of, and gravestones and stuff. They don't want to be forgotten. It's something about the human psyche. I don't quite understand it, but it's something that you feel that you don't want it to be forgotten in life.
I guess we want to feel like we've made a change, whether that be on one day, for 1 minute of our lives, or across our business.
Could be working for a charity where you're giving back, and I'm involved with a couple of charities, and it's part of the reason for living. It is to feel that you make a difference. You're right, and speaking to what you've just said there, I think it's in a lot of us, if not all of us. We want to make a difference. Otherwise, what's the point in living? Yeah. If you can't make a difference in this world,
to have an impact, And
I think obviously you and I both work with people that are selling up or about to sell or in that point of success. But do you sort of see? I mean, I naturally feel compelled to support people who really are looking at doing vocational work, really actually saying, what can I do? Use my skills that I've accumulated. Do you see more of a growth in that? Do you think there's more? Because that's quite a new thing, I think, in the world of success and those that have made it. But I'm very hopeful and excited to see more organisations, foundations, charities created that are based on a kind of core purpose or even talent or vision, and using what you've come for, like Focus Foundation, for example, somewhere we both really know very well. Chris Goodman has done this. He's created a foundation built on the values of his business, that is supporting charities now. What are your thoughts on that, if anyone's considering that's listening to this? And
Definitely. I mean, it's part of a legacy. It doesn't have to be after you die. You could be a living legacy.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. I mean, that's the real beauty of it, is that it's a living legacy, so you're involved. It may be philanthropic work, it might be a foundation, could be teaching Albanian kids from a double-decker bus.
One day.
Because it isn't all about acquisition of wealth and money, and there is the reward involved with an orphanage over in Albania, and just taking some Christmas presents there with the little ones up to 5 years of age. I mean, that is just as rewarding as growing a business to 15 million turnover that I did once in the past.
Wow.
It's a different sort
I
of
think you need to
satisfaction.
repeat that statement again, Rob. I think that's one of those that needs to be said
Yeah.
twice.
Well, giving
No,
Christmas presents, yes.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you've achieved what a lot of people listening to this will be aspiring to, and that's such a key, beautiful, powerful point for people to hear.
Yeah, no, I got as much pleasure giving those gifts to the sub 5-year-old orphans than I did growing a business to an 8-figure sum. I'd still feel as good, but it comes from a different place.
That's something interesting actually, around that feeling of achievement or doing something. So when a lot of the business owners you speak to have sold, you've helped to sell or get to what are their feelings and mindset around that, like that euphoria moment? Is it I've achieved? So for example, let's put in the figure 15 million. We're going to use that as a figure, but I want to achieve 15, and you've helped them get there through sale and acquisition and etc. And you've achieved that now. As you achieve 15 million. Is there that euphoria? What's people's mindsets, feelings around that?
Yeah, there is no euphoria moment. It's quite interesting. A lot of business owners go to the cash point to see.
To see the number.
Yeah.
Because
selling a business is period is often a year. It takes a year. It's not a few months. It's not a quick fix. And it just becomes entrenched in lawyers and accountants and paperwork and contracts and an average transaction. I was told by a lawyer once that easily 5,000 emails are exchanged between various parties because you copy people in. There's quite a few people involved. It's laborious. The joy you once had at the outset of the project to sell that business disappears. But there isn't a euphoria. It's actually a bit of an anticlimax. Once you've signed all the papers, all the warranties, all of this, all of that, you sit back and think, what next? It isn't, I've got a chunk of money. It isn't that at all.
So what is it that still makes us strive for that then?
I don't know. There's probably some psychologists listening into this that will be able to explain how the human brain is wired. I think that money is a short-term. So my own homespun psychology is money is a short-term motivator. It doesn't give long-term satisfaction at all, which is why it shouldn't be at the top of anyone's list. Relationships and health come above money. I think it's something. If there's anyone out there that's a religious person, spiritual person, people working in the Bible was a good thing to do. So you go back thousands and thousands of years. I think it is otherwise we just get slovenly and lazy and fat, eating dinosaur meat. I think we need to work. I think it's something part of our inner being. You'd probably know more than me, Jo, on this. You're more insightful on this.
Well, I feel we need to create. It's actually about being creators, and that could be money as part of the picture, but it's creating something, and progressing, expanding, and that might be only in your village.
Yep.
But we can still expand in our village just because we're a globally, continuously connected world. That doesn't mean to say that expansion needs to be global too. But yeah, I believe we need to create and listen to our heart's desires. And we spoke about this before we came on. Personally, I believe that we all carry a sealed envelope which has got our true purpose, our spiritual divine purpose in our pockets in this envelope, and we can tap into what that is. And I think a lot of people haven't realised what that is, or had the kind of feeling that the permission to open that envelope and say, right, this is really what I feel I'm here to do, and this may or may not make money, but all the proof in the pudding is that if you follow that purpose, you will naturally make money, because the money will come because you're living and in an energy of truly feeling aligned with who you
Yeah.
are and why you're here. So the money will come as a reaction rather than the cause.
Definitely agree. And even in the micro world of sales, you can detect a desperate salesperson that's got to hit their target this month. You can smell them a mile off.
Yeah.
I know I can. I had an alarm guy last week, commission only, come to the home, need to speak to both decision makers, husband and wife. And Christina doesn't play that game at all, so she goes wandering off. But you can smell a desperate salesperson. And actually, he would have been better to have kept what I was buying anyway. And I said to him, I made it really easy, I'm buying. But he goes through his presentation.
Oh.
And I could detect the desperation on a commission-only job. So I definitely agree with you, Jo. If you're just yourself, whatever your passion and thing, and you can add value to that person, and most salespeople should listen more than they talk. You can pick up so much if you're listening. The money will come out of it, because successful salespeople are relationship sellers, and actually people are buying from them, they're not being sold to. And definitely the money follows, but you've got to be comfortable with what you're doing, and do it with the right authenticity and the right heart and the right intent. The money follows. The trouble is that we go for the money first.
Yeah.
And that often leads to problems.
Yeah. And isn't it a case of, in your experience, that the money and success is the belief is that will make them feel good and fill the void that actually comes from a very different place and is nothing to do with the money and success.
Makes you feel good for a while. When I retired 2 years ago and sold up, I bought an Aston Martin. I've always wanted an Aston.
What colour?
It's black.
Oh, okay, good.
With a sandy
grey
interior,
one.
just like Dubai.
Nice.
I'd always wanted an Aston. Not that I'm James Bond. And loved it for the first few days. Now, 2 years down the line, it's lovely. It's lovely to look at. It's a piece of art, really. That's what I say to Christina. It's art. It's not a car. It's art. But that excitement's waned, and I'm not ungrateful. It's just, it's there. And I did 1,800 miles in it last year. 1,800 miles. That was it. 650 quid for road tax yesterday. So we work out that's before you put fuel in it. So the acquisition of stuff and money is short term. It gives you a short high. Is it dopamine? One of the means. Dopamine? I don't know. It's a feel good, but you don't last long. The pursuit of money is a myth.
Well, that's what I mean.
It's a mistake.
It's a mistake, and it can be. It's an easy focus, isn't it? But really, what you're trying to do is fill a gap, or trying to please someone, or trying to kind of tidy up your own sort of mess of what you see yourself as. Because then, if you're a success or a millionaire, I think sometimes those two things just get labelled together.
And
it's because the narrative is still that someone.
Yeah.
Because we sit around a table of 10 people, and there's 5 people that are multi-millionaires. Purely from a business point of view, you look and go, they're successful.
Yeah.
Whereas someone who maybe turns over £200,000 but has built loads of great relationships and is a happier person, got good, still married and kids and all them type of things.
What do we value as a society?
Yeah.
This workaholic thing is still present for me, because I know I shared this with a mate of mine last week about the exotic plants. I've got a decent sized garden. I've got all these plans. I want a potter in my garden. I like going out at 6 o'clock in the morning with a cup of coffee, watch the fish, and tend the plants and see things grow. It's the creation bit, I suppose. My mate Chris last week said, he said, if you're doing exotic, you could take cuttings, you could set up your own business, YouTube channel, eBay. You could have people coming out.
Monty Don.
We've got quite a large driveway shingle. We could get 20 cars on the plot. He said it would be just like Jeremy Clarkson and his farm. And immediately there was the entrepreneur in me. Thought, "Oh, this is fantastic!" And I thought the whole idea was I was supposed to be pottering and taking it a bit easier and slowing it down, and I wasn't going to create a business out of it. But I can't help remembering what Chris said to me last week. So it's hard.
You must have all heard the story, I'm sure, about the fisherman when the guy goes to him and he says, you've got the best fishing boat here, you get all the fish. He said, like, if you could, you could turn this into a big business. If you teach other people how to do this, you get a fleet of boats, and then you could do. And he said, then what will I do? So then you could have all the time to do what you want to do. Go and fish. So exactly that. And you just got it was such a brilliant thing, because you go, do you know what? I'm doing the thing I love doing, and I don't need a fleet and become a millionaire to do exactly what I'm doing now.
And let's face it, the vast majority of people on this planet are not millionaires, let alone multi-millionaires or billionaires. They're not. They're normal.
But there are more billionaires than ever. So there's a lot of money.
But proportionally, they're just on the eye of a needle.
Yeah. Perhaps we just need to redefine what success means. It's really that simple.
And actually, that for me is up. It's taken me, and me and you spoke about it a lot, but I think that, and you asked me before we come on the podcast, what are you trying to get? That is what I'm trying. It's actually, I want to try and change the narrative about how we define what success is.
Especially for our kids.
For exactly that, so that they're not in this consumer world where they believe that them being successful is based on a financial...
Part of rewriting that narrative in the business world is success in business isn't the size of your turnover or bottom line. It should be, are you adding value to your clients? What's the impact of what you do for your clients? That should be the value. So loads going out to clients, doing video testimonials, podcasts with clients. It's nothing more rewarding than hearing from a client how you've made a difference in their particular world. That should be success for a business.
And that's why when you went to Albania, those 5-year-olds were your clients then?
Yes. Yeah.
So the value you gave them.
Yeah.
I went out to Gambia just before my dad passed. He lived out there. And I gave 20 footballs, deflated, just in case you out in my suitcase with me to a school. And that was probably the most successful time of my one of the most successful moments of my life.
Wow.
Giving that 300 kids in the school, and they didn't have one single football. And, African Gambians like football. It's a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
They're very good at it.
Yeah. And it's the smiles on the faces. It's pure joy, isn't it?
Never forget it.
Yeah, me too. It's pure joy, and it's simple, and it don't cost much. You don't need to be a millionaire to give, because it could be just your time. The most valuable resource we've got is our time.
Yeah, I really agree with that, and I sort of do some work for a homeless shelter, Safe Haven homeless project for men in Brighton, and I see a lot within our network, Sam, of money giving, and it is phenomenal. I think probably the most generous people I feel right now are in Sussex, because so much giving is done. But I'm going to take this moment. I think it's time now to really donate time and what you can bring personally. And I was saying this to you earlier, Rob, wasn't I, that people in your position, and you too, Sam, with the resources and the networks, you have an incredible value in all that you are, in talent, wisdom, knowledge, and go back to earlier, I think everyone can start a business as well as have a part-time job that it pays the bills. But why not create an entrepreneurial surge, but that is mindful and that is passionate, based on change for the greater good, that wonderful saying. But there is a lot of huge amount of difference that can be made by you offering your time as a mentor, or to teach, or to go to remote parts of the world where people could set up businesses if only they had one, an hour of wisdom from you, or guidance of how to do it well and manage their finances.
Don't get me wrong, there is an importance to money, but it's only a tool. It shouldn't be the end destination. It's just a tool to do stuff.
Yeah.
Clearly, if you've got a few quid, you can do more things. But you're right. The valuable piece is your time, and sadly, in 21st century living, we've got less time. I remember being sold to by an IT salesman in the 1980s in the bank, saying, once you get computers in offices, Rob, within 5 years there'll be no paper, and we'll have so much leisure time we won't know what to do with it. What a load of BS. That was in the mid-80s.
Now we've got computers on our...
We're never out the office, are we? We're so connected. We're too connected sometimes. We've lost something about people and relationship. I know that with some of my younger kids. They have friends online. I said, so they're not real then? Dad, get with it, Dad. I said, well, you don't meet with them, you don't play football with them, you don't, Nah.
I interviewed someone called Paige Collins, who come on, you know Paige, don't you?
Really well, yeah.
And she's an amazing individual. And one thing that really resonated with me is we're talking about that measure of success and how you measure it. And they said, from a business point, wouldn't it be wonderful if actually the success of a business was measured on emotional profits as opposed to how well you work with your clients, what you deliver, how well you look after your staff, and that was the barometer of where we measured.
Interesting.
I love that thing, and actually maybe you're financially rewarded because your emotional profits are through the roof, and the measure of a successful business was actually the impact you're having and how measured in an emotional
And even
way.
better, the more emotional profit you create, the less tax you pay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I just said
There we go.
that.
Yeah, so
Probably
far.
'cause
And
you're
until,
talking about tax.
Get in touch with the government
HMRC.
about it. HMRC, let's make a note of that.
until the Chancellor realises there's a good gain here. But you're right.
But no, because the Chancellor will win in the end, because the less people that are poorly and feel better about themselves, I'm talking about the end game, because ultimately we all start feeling better about our lives, health will be better, because all of the undercurrent of all this conversation is that it impacts how we feel about ourselves. And I often think that there's AA, there's DA, there's all these 12-step programs. We need CA, Cortisol Anonymous, because too many people, I really believe, are addicted to their cortisol. They're living on stress.
Yes.
And that is something that, another point I think we've got another podcast then.
For next time. I love that. We're coming towards the end now, Rob. I am just keen. I know we've talked a lot about this definition of success, which is amazing, because it's, like I say, for me, it's the essence, I guess, of what the podcast is. I'm keen to just go back to the point in Dubai, and
you love the Dubai, don't you?
It's just so fascinating to me.
I've got a book I can give you later.
I'm going to definitely have that for you. But
I've got it with me.
Your mindset around what you thought success was then, how different is that to where you are right now?
My first job, on my first day with the bank manager, I was 18. John Sykes, my boss, my manager, said to me, he took me into his office, oak panelled. He said, Rob, one thing you've got to learn in the business world, this is your first day, fresh out of college, is that to get on in life, you need to climb the greasy pole of success. And you could tell I wasn't quite taking it in. He said, you've got to tread on the heads of other people to get to the top. It was 1982, 2nd of February 1982. John's probably dead by now. But what he said to me lives on, and he was so wrong. But that was the conditioning. And I spent 18 years in that company, that you had to get advantage over it. It was competitive, and it was the greasy pole thing that stuck with me, and that conditioned my thinking that it's all about achievement. And he was so wrong. It's the reverse, actually. It's helping other people. And you're at the base of it, lifting them up, because now you feel that you've got a role, you're helping others to achieve. And that's, as business owners, when we take on staff particularly, our role is to empower and upskill, not to control and be autocratic and be king of the hill or queen of the hill. We're there to lift up others. But so I still had that mentality when I was in Dubai, that is about success in life was about financial success and career progression But I was deconstructed, a bit like the SAS thing, where they put you through boot camp. They strip you. And I was stripped by life's experiences. So I certainly, the John Sykes thing is completely wrong. It's about lifting other people up.
Love that.
Because the strongest person is the person at the bottom.
Yeah.
People at the top ain't got much to do.
Yeah.
It's the person taking all the weight underneath. But that is a reverse psychology of the company pyramid, isn't it? Because usually you have the bosses at the top and then it cascades down. Actually, you've got to reverse the pyramid.
Yeah. Brilliant. I love that. Well, finally, what does the future hold for you then, other than...
When you're not looking at the koi
when you're
carp.
not looking at the koi carp.
With my cup of coffee at 6 in the morning.
Yeah, what about the rest of the day?
That's a really good question, because I was sharing with Jo earlier. I don't know what my purpose in life is right now. For the last 2 years, I've been doing consultancy and coaching and helping other business owners prepare and scale up and exits and fundraising, because that's what I've done before. But I've done. The difference is I'm picking and choosing who I'm working with. I don't have to. I don't have to work with people. But that's not what's ultimately fulfilling for me. So I've got to find my core purpose again. And I don't know what that looks like. Jo gave me some very helpful advice earlier.
She's good at that.
She is, yeah. She just dropped it in there. And I think it's important, because I don't know whether I'm going to die tomorrow or I'm going to live for the next 30 years. I have no idea. So I don't know about the timescale. I do have a sense that it will involve doing less. I do like the gardening, because I'm pretty creative. I'm a painter when I got the time. I do like the gardening aspect. I might compromise and do a little side business with eBay and a YouTube channel, how-to videos, how to grow a Trachycarpus fortunii from a seedling.
Watch out for this YouTube channel.
It's the hardy palm.
Okay.
Yeah, Trachycarpus.
What does hardy mean? Anyway, don't.
Yeah, so it survives.
See, it's obviously needed.
Someone asked me, why do I want palm trees? I said, so I can put my hammock. Well, you can buy one from B&Q. That you don't need a palm tree. So I think definitely the gardening. Probably do a little sideline there. I do want to travel more with my other half. It'll be in a few years' time. We do want to do more. I've only seen a quarter of the countries in the world. I'd like to see the other 3/4.
Amazing.
And continue to be involved in charities. I'll probably do a bit of personal coaching and consultancy as well, because it's doing the similar things but less of them. So I need a strong person to push the laptop down, and that's Christina. So, but I don't know. There might be something new around the corner. I haven't discovered it yet, and that's the exciting thing. When you sell up, it's finishing one chapter and starting a new one, but I don't know what that new one was. I thought I knew what it was. But 2 years down the line, I don't know.
And like you say, that's quite an exciting place to be, I guess.
It is exciting. It's a little bit scary as well. Business owners often think once they've retired, the next stage in life is death. So that's why some business owners don't sell up. Because if they don't sell up, they don't retire, and therefore they don't die quite yet.
Yeah, so true.
It's a weird psychology.
Yeah.
So we'll see. It might be to do with motorcycling, because I'm into bikes, fair weather biker. Quite like to tour around continents like America and Europe to China on motorcycle.
Keep me posted on that.
You into bikes?
Yeah, I used to ride. So when I first took over the hair salon down here, I commuted from Essex to Brighton every day. I had my Suzuki SV 650 Sport, and I only done it actually. I learned to ride out of necessity. I was never into them, but I learned to do it out of necessity, and then fell in love with it. And my dream now, everyone said, what would be the first thing you'd buy, would probably be a Ducati and go and travel around Italy, and I love Italy. That would be my thing.
Those things are open to us.
Yeah. absolutely. So
we can have anything, but not everything.
Yeah.
It's just choosing what you want to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's freedom in life, and that's so far away from the black cloud of depression. Because now you have some degree of control because you can choose. You have options.
And being happy not knowing, isn't it part of that?
There is something
as well?
about the mystery, yeah.
Yeah, just allowing yourself to not know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it's all planned out, if it's predestined, what's the point?
Yeah.
So there is something. You're right, actually, Jo. It's something about not knowing that's quite exciting.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Excellent.
Like a first date. Should we leave it on that happy note?
We're going
Good
to
note to end.
finish always as we do with our quick fire questions. If
Oh,
we can.
right, yeah.
I'm
Go
gonna
for it.
Throw these ones at you. So, one piece of advice do you give to your teenage self?
Oh, listen to other people that are older than you.
I like that one.
Who has inspired you in your career and why?
I would say it's a chap called Steve Barry, who was my regional director in NatWest Bank. I learnt a lot of sales techniques from him, and he inspired me. He's a charismatic character, fantastic sales guy, and he was my boss. Years down the line, I employed him, and he's still working in Evolution, and he transformed the business for me, which actually enabled me to grow the business, employ an MD, and for me to exit. So Steve, definitely.
Amazing.
He'll love hearing that if he hears this.
Yeah, we're sending it to him. We'll send him a link. Can you recommend a book or podcast to our listeners that has had an impact or influence on you, other than your own book?
Well, I'm being fine, actually, I would say.
As luck would have it, we seem to have a copy there.
I like reading autobiographical books, people's stories. I'm not into fiction. I'm into people's lives. So I mean, anything from the sort of the Richard Bransons, even Dan Locke, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I have some issues with some of the things, but actually you can get something good out of most people's writings. But anything that's someone's life and what they've learnt.
Because everyone has a story to tell, isn't that right?
Finally, what is your one rule for living a fulfilled life?
Definitely plan for tomorrow, but live for today.
Brilliant.
And what a brilliant way to finish.
Definitely.
Bob, listen, cannot thank you enough for coming on and just being so open and honest.
Been fun.
It's
well.
been absolutely brilliant and inspiring, and what a brilliant episode. And thank you so much, my amazing co-host for today.
Thank
This
you.
has
Hasn't
been
felt like
awesome.
Spanish Inquisition at all, or a police interview.
Well, hopefully they've not anymore.
Thank you for
been
the
great.
invite. It's been fun.
It's been a
Oh,
brilliant
amazing.
episode, and
Thank you.
thank you very
Sam.
much. Thank
Really,
you, and
really
I
enjoyed
believe that, as they say, is a wrap.
Yay.
This is the County Business Talks podcast, produced by H2 Productions.